They called her a fool for clinging to a failing orchard, a patch of dirt they swore was cursed. Sarah Mitchell's family laughed when her grandfather left her Willow Creek farm in Ellensburg, Washington, instead of wealth. "Sell it for pennies," they mocked, dismissing her dreams. But a brass key in a faded journal revealed a secret worth millions, turning their scorn to disbelief. What lay hidden beneath those ancient trees? Why did strangers shadow her every step? Share your tales of overlooked treasures below, and if Sarah's story stirs your curiosity, like, share, and subscribe to Hidden Roots for more buried truths. Sarah Mitchell's hands were rough from pruning apple trees, the morning mist clinging to the rows of Willow Creek farm. The old barn creaked as she hauled crates, her boots sinking into the soft earth of Ellensburg, Washington. "Morning, Sarah," a neighbor called, tipping his hat. She smiled, her 42-year-old face lined with grit, hiding the strain of mounting debts. Her kids, Lily and Caleb, were her heart, but unpaid bills and her ex-husband David's broken promises weighed heavy. Her phone buzzed. Lily's school. Sarah's heart raced, bracing for news of her daughter's latest trouble. She glanced at an old apple tree Amos had planted, its gnarled branches whispering his strength, anchoring her resolve to keep the farm he'd loved. That evening, Sarah Mitchell sat in her weathered farmhouse, the kids asleep under the soft creak of the old roof. Her brother, James, and sister Evelyn stormed in, their voices sharp with disdain. James, in a crisp city suit, paced the worn floorboards. "Sarah, that orchard's a money pit. Sell it for whatever you can get." Evelyn, her pearls gleaming, scoffed. "Grandpa Amos left you nothing but dirt and debts." Sarah's fingers traced a faded journal on the table, its pages hiding a brass key and a note in Amos's steady hand. "Find the roots, Sarah. Trust your instinct." She held her ground, voice firm. "It's his legacy. I'm not selling." James's eyes narrowed. "You're throwing away our future for a dead farm." Evelyn's laugh cut like glass. "It's worthless." They left, their words lingering like frost. Sarah turned the key in her hand, its weight stirring memories of Amos tending the trees, his quiet strength a guide. She couldn't shake the feeling that the orchard held more than apples. It held answers. For now, she tucked the journal away, her resolve as deep as the roots beneath her land. Sarah Mitchell couldn't sleep, the brass key from her grandfather's journal heavy in her pocket. She glanced at Lily and Caleb, their faces soft in the moonlight, filtering through the farmhouse window. "Let's go to the orchard," she whispered, her voice steady despite the late hour. Lily's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Like an adventure, Mom?" Sarah smiled, masking a flicker of unease. "Exactly, sweetheart." They bundled up against the chilly Ellensburg night, their boots crunching on the gravel path to Willow Creek Farm. Caleb clung to Lily's hand, his voice small. "It's kinda spooky out here." Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "Stay close, buddy." The barn loomed ahead, its weathered planks whispering memories of Amos's calloused hands tending the trees. Inside, Sarah's flashlight swept the cluttered storage room, packed with dusty crates and old tools. Her fingers brushed a rough patch on the floor, hidden beneath a stack of burlap sacks. Her pulse quickened as she uncovered a trapdoor, its hinges rusted but intact. The key turned with a sharp click, and the door groaned open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Hold hands," Sarah said, leading them down, the air thick with earth and secrets. At the bottom, they found a hidden cellar. Walls lined with faded maps, pinned with cryptic markers, shelves stuffed with coded ledgers, stacks of foreign cash, and an old radio, its hum alive in the stillness. Lily gasped at a wooden chest, its lid carved with strange, angular symbols. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it, finding yellowed photos of Amos with stern-faced men in suits, their eyes guarded. A note in his familiar scrawl read, "The truth grows deep, Sarah. Guard it." Her breath caught. This orchard wasn't just a farm. It was a vault of secrets. Caleb pointed to a map, whispering, "What was Grandpa doing?" Sarah shook her head, her mind racing. "Something bigger than us, kiddo." The radio crackled, as if waiting for a voice from the past. Sarah's heart swelled with awe and fear. She was stepping into Amos's shadow, holding a legacy she barely understood, determined to protect it for her children. The next morning, Sarah Mitchell worked the orchard, her hands stained with apple juice as she sorted crates under the Ellensburg sun. The hum of bees mingled with the rustle of leaves at Willow Creek Farm, but her mind lingered on the cellar's secrets: maps, cash, photos of Amos with strangers. A pickup truck rolled up the dirt path, kicking up dust. An older woman stepped out, her silver hair pulled tight, her eyes sharp as she scanned the rows of trees. She wore a plain jacket, but her measured steps hinted at purpose. "Got any fresh apples?" she asked, her voice clipped. Sarah nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Right over here." She led the woman to a stand, her senses prickling. "Name's Ruth," the woman said, unprompted, her gaze locking onto Sarah's. "I knew your grandfather. Amos was a good man." Sarah's heart skipped, her grip tightening on a crate. "You knew Grandpa?" she asked, voice steady but probing. Ruth's lips curved, not quite a smile. "Better than most." This orchard wasn't just his business, Sarah. It was a front, a safe house for the CIA. The words landed like a stone, stealing Sarah's breath. She glanced around, but the farmhands kept working, oblivious. "A safe house," she whispered, stepping closer. Ruth's voice lowered, barely audible over the wind. Amos ran messages, hid assets, coordinated drops for decades, right under everyone's noses. "That cellar you found? No accident." Sarah's mind reeled, flashing to the maps pinned to the walls, the foreign bills, those grainy photos. "Why tell me now?" she asked, her voice tight. Ruth picked up an apple, her eyes never leaving Sarah's. "Because you're in it, Sarah. Amos picked you to carry his work." Pride and dread swirled in Sarah's chest. "Carry what?" she pressed. Ruth set the apple down. "His legacy. But it draws trouble, watchful eyes, trust few." Sarah thought of recent visitors, a man sketching odd symbols by the barn, another with a faint accent asking about Amos's old suppliers. Ruth slid a worn card across the crate, a number scrawled on it. "Call if you need me." She walked away, leaving Sarah clutching the card. The orchard's familiar rows, now heavy with secrets she was only beginning to unravel. That night, Sarah Mitchell sat alone at her scarred kitchen table. The farmhouse hushed under the soft creak of floorboards, settling in the Ellensburg chill. Lily and Caleb slept upstairs, their dreams untouched by the weight of secrets Sarah now carried. The brass key from Amos's journal gleamed beside a stack of his faded photographs, its shine catching the dim lamplight. She traced his face in one, a rare, crinkled grin as he stood with her, a gangly 10-year-old under Willow Creek Farm's oldest apple tree. The memory pulled her back. Amos, his hands rough from years of pruning, teaching her to graft branches, his voice low and steady. "Roots matter, Sarah," he'd said, his eyes warm but distant, as if guarding a truth she was too young to grasp. He'd told her cryptic stories of trips to far-off places, always returning with a quiet weariness, humming old folk tunes to mask it. "You're my anchor," he'd murmured once, kneeling beside her in the orchard, his calloused fingers brushing dirt from her cheek. The memory stung, sharp and bittersweet, as she opened one of his coded ledgers, its pages dense with cryptic entries, dates, initials, numbers, etched across decades. A loose letter slipped out. Amos's scrawl bold. Assets worth 200 million. Cash, gold, trusts, buried in the roots. Her breath caught, the scales staggering. Her grandfather, the man who'd carved wooden toys for her and chuckled at her clumsy harvests, had been a CIA operative, this orchard his carefully crafted cover. Another page revealed sketches of safe houses linked across the northwest, marked with symbols matching the seller's chest. A second letter, tucked deeper, spoke of sacrifices for family and a network of allies who guard the truth. Sarah's hands trembled, her mind reeling at the scope of Amos's hidden life. Had he lived with this weight, always watching for the watchful eyes Ruth warned of? She thought of her own sacrifices, scraping by to keep the farm, shielding Lily and Caleb from David's neglect, the endless bills piling up like fallen leaves. Amos's strength echoed in her own, but his legacy felt like a mantle too heavy to bear. She pictured the man sketching by the barn, his symbols eerily familiar, and the stranger with the faint accent probing about Amos's old suppliers. Were they tied to this network, hunting his secrets? A third note, folded tightly, caught her eye, its words chilling. If you're reading this, Sarah, they're closer than you think. Trust only those who know the roots. Her heart raced. Amos had foreseen this, chosen her to carry his burden. She thought of Lily's fierce spirit, Caleb's quiet trust, and her resolve deepened. The orchard's hum outside felt alive, its trees whispering Amos's courage. She tucked the journals away, her will sharpened like a blade. She'd unravel his truth, not just for herself, but for her children, to honor the man who'd trusted her with his life's greatest secret. The farmhouse stood silent, but Sarah felt Amos's presence, urging her to stand tall, to guard the roots that held their family strong. Late that night, Sarah Mitchell slipped back into Willow Creek Farm's barn, the brass key a quiet weight in her pocket. She'd locked Lily and Caleb in the farmhouse, their sleepy protests fading behind her. The seller's secrets, maps, cash, Amos's coded ledgers, pulled her like a tide. She descended the creaking staircase, the air thick with earth and mystery. Kneeling by the shelves, she inserted a dusty cassette labeled with Amos's initials into an old player. The screen flickered, and her grandfather's face appeared, weathered but steady, his voice warm yet firm. "Sarah, if you're seeing this, you've found my truth," he began. Her throat tightened, tears pricking her eyes. "This orchard was my cover, a CIA safe house. For 30 years I ran messages, hid assets, kept Ellensburg safe. I left you a legacy, 200 million in cash, gold, trusts. You're stronger than you know." The words stunned her, pride and shock colliding. The tape cut to static, but a sharp beep, the security system's alarm, snapped her back. Her pulse raced as she checked the grainy feed. 2 figures in dark coats skulked near the barn's door. Sarah locked the cellar hatch, grabbing a flashlight, her hands trembling. Ruth's warning rang in her ears. Watchful eyes. Were these the man sketching symbols? The stranger with the accent? She crept upstairs, heart pounding, peering through a crack in the barn's planks. The figures pried at the lock, their movements swift. Sarah's breath hitched as she dialed Ruth, whispering, "Someone's breaking in." Ruth's voice was calm. "Stay hidden. They're after Amos's files. I'm on my way." Sarah clutched a heavy pruning shears, her grip fierce. The barn door creaked open, footsteps soft but deliberate. She pressed against the wall, every sense sharp, as their flashlights sliced through the darkness. They muttered in a clipped, unfamiliar language, one holding a device scanning the air. As they neared the cellar's trapdoor, Sarah's fear hardened into resolve. She stepped forward, shears raised, her voice a low growl. "Get out now!" The intruders froze, then scrambled away as Ruth's truck roared up the drive. Sarah stood firm, chest heaving, Amos's words echoing. "You're stronger than you know." The orchard's secrets were safe, for now, but she knew the hunt was far from over. Days later, Sarah Mitchell stood behind the apple stand at Willow Creek Farm, the Ellensburg breeze carrying the scent of ripe fruit. Her hands sorted crates, but her mind churned with the seller's secrets. Amos's CIA past, the $200 million legacy. The crunch of gravel announced her siblings James and Evelyn striding up the path, their faces tight with impatience. James, in his city suit, slammed a stack of papers onto the stand. "Sarah, Amos's debts are real." "Sell this farm, or we'll drag you to court," he snapped, his voice cutting through the orchard's hum. Evelyn, her pearls gleaming, smirked. "Grandpa covered our bribes to save our real estate deals." "You're no hero, clinging to this dirt." The betrayal stung like a slap. Amos had buried their crimes to protect the family. Sarah's jaw clenched, her fingers brushing the brass key in her pocket. "You used him," she said, voice low but steady. "This farm's his legacy, not your payout." James scoffed, tossing the forged documents. "You'll lose everything, Sarah." Evelyn's laugh was sharp. "It's just trees." Sarah's eyes narrowed, knowing Amos's journals in the cellar held proof of their money laundering, enough to unravel their schemes. "Get off my land," she said, her tone cold as the morning frost. They turned to leave, Evelyn's heels clicking, James muttering threats. Their words lingered like a storm cloud, but Sarah's resolve stood firm. She thought of Lily and Caleb, their faces bright despite their struggles, and the weight of Amos's sacrifice settled deeper. He'd carried their shame to keep the family whole, but she wouldn't let their greed destroy his legacy. Ruth's warning echoed, watchful eyes. And Sarah wondered if James and Evelyn were tied to the strangers lurking around the farm. She headed to the barn, her boots steady on the familiar earth, and pulled out Amos's journals. Pages of coded entries detailed their bribes, a scandal Amos had shielded for years. Sarah's chest ached, torn between love for her family and disgust at their betrayal. She tucked the journals away, her mind set. For Lily, for Caleb, for Amos, she'd protect the orchard's secrets, no matter who came for them. The trees swayed gently, as if whispering Amos's strength, urging her to stand tall. Sarah Mitchell's heart pounded as her truck tore down the winding Ellensburg road, the orchard's secrets, Amos's CIA Safehouse, the $200 million legacy, burning in her mind. Her phone had rung minutes ago, the voice of Lily's principal frantic. "Someone tried to grab your kids at school." Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel, fear clawing at her chest as she sped toward Ellensburg Middle. She pictured Lily's fierce eyes, Caleb's quiet trust, and pushed harder on the gas. At the school, she found them huddled in the office, Lily's face pale, Caleb clutching her hand. "Mom!" he cried, running into her arms. Sarah held them close, her voice steady despite the tremor inside. "You're safe now. I've got you." The principal explained. A man in a dark van had lingered near the playground, calling Lily's name until a teacher intervened. Police traced the van to a hired thug, paid by David's new wife, Vanessa, to scare Sarah into selling Willow Creek Farm. Vanessa's jealousy, fed by David's bitter complaints about Sarah's stubborn hold on the orchard, had turned vicious. Sarah's blood boiled, but she knelt before her kids, brushing Lily's hair back. "No one's taking our home," she whispered, her resolve fierce. Caleb's eyes, wide with fear, softened at her words. Back at the farmhouse, Sarah locked every door, her hands steady, but her mind racing. Vanessa's plot was no coincidence. James and Evelyn's threats echoed in her head, their forged papers claiming Amos's debts. Were they all connected, circling the farm's hidden wealth? Sarah thought of the seller's maps, the coded ledgers, Amos's note. Guard the truth. She sat Lily and Caleb down, their faces still shaken. "Grandpa left us something special," she said, voice calm but firm. "This farm's more than trees. It's our strength." Lily's chin lifted, a spark of defiance returning. "We'll help, Mom." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling. She'd shield them from Vanessa's schemes, from her siblings' greed, from the strangers watching the orchard. Amos's legacy wasn't just money. It was a shield for her family. As night fell, Sarah stood at the window, the farm's silhouette dark against the stars. Vanessa's plan had failed, but the real threats loomed larger. Sarah's resolve hardened. She'd face them all, for her kids, for Amos, one determined step at a time. Sarah Mitchell stood in the cellar beneath Willow Creek Farm, the air thick with the scent of earth and secrets. Ruth's voice was steady as she traced the orchard's hidden security system. Flickering monitors, coded locks, alarms threaded through the barn's weathered frame. "Amos built this to endure," she said, her eyes sharp with respect. Sarah nodded, her mind honed despite the sting of Vanessa's attempt to scare Lily and Caleb at school. The brass key in her pocket was a quiet weight, tying her to Amos's legacy. 200 million in cash, gold and trusts, a fortune woven into the farm's roots. She studied the seller's maps, their cryptic pins marking safe houses across the northwest, the vastness of her grandfather's double life sinking in. Ruth's hands moved deftly, resetting an alarm. "You're in Amos's shadow now, Sarah. Trust your instincts." Sarah's resolve steadied, but her heart still raced for her kids, their shaken faces etched in her mind. Upstairs, she gathered Lily and Caleb in the farmhouse kitchen, the warm light softening their worry. "Grandpa's orchard is special," she said, voice calm but fierce. "It's got secrets we're guarding together." Lily's eyes gleamed with defiance. "Like spies, Mom," Sarah smiled, ruffling Caleb's hair. "Kinda, buddy." She taught them to watch for strange cars near the farm, a small step to ease their fears while sharing the weight of Amos's truth. Their courage, despite the chaos, warmed her soul. That evening, Vanessa appeared unannounced, her heels crunching the gravel path to the porch. Her smile was tight, her eyes cold as she leaned against the rail. "Sell the farm, Sarah. David's owed his share of its wealth, and I'll make sure he gets it." Sarah's blood surged, her voice low and hard. "You tried to scare my kids, Vanessa. This is our home. Get off my land or you'll regret it." Vanessa's lips curled, her tone venomous. "You're out of your depth clinging to this dirt. David says it's hiding millions, and we won't stop." Sarah stepped forward, her gaze unyielding. "Try me." Vanessa hesitated, her confidence cracking, then turned away, her parting words sharp. "This isn't over." Sarah's chest heaved, her resolve afire against the night. Alone, she pored over Amos's journals, their pages revealing James's bribes, a scandal her grandfather had buried to shield the family. A memory rose. Amos, years ago, showing her how to brace a sagging tree. "Roots hold firm, Sarah," he'd said, his voice steady, his eyes proud. She clung to that strength now, the farm her family's shield. Moonlight spilled through the kitchen window, casting shadows over the table where she'd sat with Lily and Caleb hours before. Their faces, Lily's spark, Caleb's quiet trust, fueled her. She thought of Amos, his calloused hands tending the orchard, his sacrifices for those he loved. The weight of his legacy, once daunting, now felt like armor. Sarah's fingers brushed the brass key, her will unbreakable. She'd guard Amos's truth, not just for her children, but to honor the man who'd trusted her with his life's work. The orchard's soft hum outside pulsed like a heartbeat, its trees whispering courage, urging her to stand tall against Vanessa's threats, her siblings' greed, and the shadows circling closer. Weeks later, Sarah Mitchell stood before Willow Creek Farm's newly painted barn, the Ellensburg sunset casting a golden glow over the orchard. A crowd of neighbors, farmers, and friends gathered, their voices warm with anticipation. The TV in the farmhouse had blared earlier. Local real estate moguls, James and Evelyn Mitchell, arrested for money laundering and bribery. Sarah's heart had steadied, the weight of their greed lifting. Amos's journals, handed to the FBI by Ruth, had exposed their schemes. Bribes tied to the scandal her grandfather once buried to protect them. The betrayal stung, but relief washed over her. She'd refused to sell the farm, knowing its secret as a CIA safehouse held a $200 million legacy. Now she'd transformed it into Willow Creek Community Farm, a haven for struggling families and veterans, funded by Amos's wealth. Lily and Caleb, grinning, unveiled a new sign. Amos Mitchell, quiet hero. Sarah's chest swelled with pride. She addressed the crowd, her voice steady. This orchard taught me to see value in what's overlooked. Let's grow hope from these roots. Her words struck deep, faces in the crowd nodding, some eyes glistening. She thought of Amos, his calloused hands tending the trees, his quiet sacrifice alive in every smile here. Ruth had hinted at others tied to Amos's CIA work, leaving questions, but Sarah would face them later. For now, she honored him, his legacy thriving in the laughter of kids running through the rows. Lily tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Grandpa would love this." Sarah hugged her, Caleb joining in, their warmth her strength. She invited the crowd to share stories of their own hidden treasures, their voices rising in the crisp air. A stranger lingered by the road watching, but Sarah stood tall, unafraid. Amos's words echoed. "You're stronger than you know." The farm's secrets were safe, its purpose reborn. "Join us at Hidden Roots," she said, smiling. "Share your stories below, and let's uncover the truths that bind us." The orchard's trees swayed, as if Amos himself approved, urging Sarah to carry his legacy forward, one resolute step at a time.